farcical, so unpredictable, here on the SNL network.
Yes, that is right. Welcome, everybody, on in to the Saturday Night Network for our hot take show for week number 3 with host Nate Bargatze and musical guest Foo Fighters. My name is John from the SNN. Very pumped to be back with you late on this Saturday Halloween weekend as we get to talk about a very fun episode of Saturday Night Live with 2 special guests and all of our friends who have stayed up late with us in the chat. So let's start by bringing in our guests here, joining us for the first time in season for our 4th season covering the show, and that would be Andrew Haskell. Haskell, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It has been a while since I've gotten to stay up past 1 a.m. on one of these Saturdays, going back to, I have to say, early 2023. So excited to be here and break down what I thought was a very, very fun episode.
Absolutely. And let me not tease you any longer. It's the other Andrew. Andrew Dick from That Week in SNL is here joining us back again for his 4th season of coverage with us. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I cannot match the energy of that intro, but I am doing well and glad to be back. Is this the 4th year y'all been doing this?
100%. Yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So yeah, glad to be back for the first rodeo of the 4th year.
Absolutely. Well, we had a great time tonight watching Nate Bargatze and the Foo Fighters on SNL. I felt like this was a really exciting episode with a lot of storylines that we're going to get into. So we'll kick off our show by talking about the headlines of the night, where you're going to walk away from this episode thinking about. So Haskell, starting with you.
Yeah, I think, as much as SNL changes and the cast changes and certain routines change and all that sort of stuff, I think every so often you have an episode where you look at it and you go like, oh, that's my show. There's the DNA of this show that hasn't changed since I started watching. For me, it goes back to the early 2000s, but that's what I kind of felt tonight. And I think for this cast and everything, there was a little bit of getting their mojo back and getting their feet under them. I think big hot. I don't know how much of a hot take it's going to be. I felt like that was, of the 3 episodes to start the run of the season, that was the best episode of SNL of the season, and that was the most SNL episode of the season so far.
Yeah, there was something about tonight, Andrew, that I really felt was homey. Like I felt like it had all the makings of what you would look for if you're sitting down to watch a classic episode of SNL. I think this was a really high quality episode. How did you feel about it? What is your headline for the night?
Yeah, my headline is it felt like the most writerly episode in a very long time. Like, just really strong premises that they just stuffed to the gills with a bunch of great lines and observations and just kind of ping-ponging around the premise I did not know Nate before this. And, if you wanted quick hot takes of the first 2 episodes, didn't really like Pete's. Bad Bunny's was better, but still kind of mediocre. So I thought this was just going to be, just maybe around the same or just a little slight step up. But I thought the first hour or 40 minutes of the show was just on fire, to be honest. So, very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I felt like in season 48, we got to some real highs. Like there was an episode run where it was consistently week after week. We were very impressed. Sort of tailed off a little bit towards the end of the season, a little bit more inconsistent. And I do wonder if it just, now that we've come off this long extended break, one of the longest breaks in SNL history. Look, I liked the Pete episode. I had fun with it. I thought Bad Bunny's was okay. But I really do feel like maybe that they're going to catch their stride now. And as they're starting to head into more regular weeks to figure out how to cook with all these hosts that are coming in. And I think we got a fun one coming in November that we'll get to. So for me, I thought this was a great night. I think having 2 people in the building that have spent decades at Saturday Night Live in Christopher Walken and Dave Grohl really made it feel like a fun environment. Like the fact that Dave Grohl is in a bunch of sketches, we get the walk-in opening, we'll talk about it in a second, and then walk-in introducing the Foo Fighters. Like, this, like, it just, everything tonight felt like classic SNL. And I think that's a really, really positive thing heading into our first break of the season. So I'm excited to break it all down with you. How it's going to work tonight is we're going to go through everything sketch by sketch, and then you are going to put your thoughts in the comments. We'll bring them up on screen. So let's start with our Biden Halloween cold open. And guys, I have to tell you, I knew I was having the two of you on tonight, and I was like, okay, Haskell, Andrew, Dick, like they've been with me since the beginning of this thing. Like you guys have been around since we were doing this in the SNL Stats days. And I promise you, we're not in a time machine. Like if I went back to season 46 and watched this podcast, we would be debating who should play Joe Biden on SNL, because Jim Carrey was playing him then. In comes Alex Moffat. It was the biggest deal in the world that Moffat finally got the role. And then finally, there was like this weird thing that was happening there, and then JJ comes in at the beginning of 47, solidifies his role, and it's plucked away, probably for the reasons of the 2024 election. But I think this is a fascinating storyline to talk about, especially that it went to Mikey Day. So Haskell, what do you think about the Biden Halloween cold open?
As a sketch in general, I liked it. There was some really good lines in there. Especially him talking about ladders being like innovative when he was a kid. I thought that was the best line of the cold open. I also it was real like callback sort of cold open for me. I was not a fan. I've said this before on this podcast. I didn't like the Trump era cold opens mainly because they were so just stand still and somebody's monologuing. I liked that there was some blocking to this. He actually had to go up the ladder, come down the ladder. I enjoyed that. And then in terms of the actual Mikey Day Biden, my first thought was it a perfect Biden? No, but I also thought like this definitely would have been serviceable 4 years ago. Like I thought it was pretty good. And I don't know if this is the result of Mikey learning how to do this impression and turn this into a character over 4 years, or if they just didn't trust it back then. Like, I don't know exactly why. Like, I get that you're right. They have to get somebody else to play Biden because you're not going to be pulling like a double JAJ when it's time to do debates. So it was smart to start rolling out whoever it's going to be now. And I thought Mikey did actually a really, really good job. I thought it's obviously not going to be as good of an impression, but I thought it was pretty much just as good of a character. So my only question was like, I guess, why not give him a chance to do it 4 years ago? But I'm glad we got it now because I actually am excited to see more of Mikey Day as Joe Biden.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating conversation to have because I do believe that 4 years ago, had they given Mikey Day the role, I think us as a community would have probably not been as lenient on Mikey. But given how strong of a season Mikey had last year, and how he's sort of ingratiated himself, he's had a career renaissance really on the show. I think that we are all sort of like willing to be like, okay, let's try it, Mikey. Like, if you think you could do this, let's see what you can do. And I think this is the perfect time for him to do this if he's going to do it. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, perfect point that if this was 4 years ago, I would not have been as receptive to it. And really, I mean, yeah, the forecasting of what they're doing with this, where it's like, well, I guess James has got to be playing Trump in the debates, so we got to hand this off to somebody else, is sickening. But overall, I thought I liked this. It had a certain sort of Dana Carvey flair to the impression, where it's not, it's not a perfect impression, but it's more just the characteristics, and it just feels like Biden. And I really thought when he got up to like, climbing the ladder, I was halfway expecting like a Chevy fall from the first Candace Bergen Christmas episode or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, I really thought that they were playing with that. I was like, where are they going? And yeah, generally, I am not a fan of cold opens. Everybody that's been watching this, these hot take shows know I generally do not like the cold opens, but somehow, some way, this one, like Haskell said, just had energy, had blocking, people coming in and going. The thing with Longfellow and Devin, thought was fun. the show is getting a bit cameo heavy in this first block, but I'm not going to be too mad to see Walken. And I thought the interplay, worked well. And yeah, just kind of shocked that it's like, oh wow, this worked. Who knew?
I love this comment here from our friend Thomas, because he says, I like that it wasn't just ripped from the headlines. That has been one of my bigger complaints with the cold opens that they've written for Biden, is that they're going to take what's happening and Biden's sort of going to sit down with his people and they're going to, rehash the headlines sort of thing, and then make like obscure references, and the fact that he's older and sort of senile is the thing that they played on. But here, this felt like more of a scene. And, in dress rehearsal, they actually had a couple more people in this, including Chloe Trost as Jill Biden, which they cut from this, and Keenan as Clarence Thomas. So they shortened the cold open. And though I would have liked to see the Trost Jill Biden, I'm happy that this was shorter, because it made more of an emphasis on Christopher Walken, who is at 80 or older. He is just as brilliant as he used to be. So funny. The comedic timing is still there. It goes to show you why he is one of the greatest hosts, the 8-time host, one of the greatest hosts in SNL history, truly. And just the fun that he had talking about the true meaning of Halloween. I think that this was, just such a strong cold open. And just something that it's been few and far between over the last few years to find a great political cold open. And I think this is one of the better ones that we've been podcasting about in the last few years. For statistics purposes, previous Bidens on the show include Kevin Nealon, Jason Sudeikis, Woody Harrelson, John Mulaney, Jim Carrey, Alex Moffat, JJ, and then Pete did a little bit of a Biden in 47. But so that's sort of like a half impression. But yeah, it'll be exciting. I wondered if they would consider doing the Dana Carvey thing and having JJ play both at the same time, one pre-recorded, whether it's Biden or Trump, and then one live. But clearly they felt like there's no reason not to give this to Mikey. And I think we're going to be seeing a Mikey versus JJ heading into the spring. And then in SNL 50, once it's the general election, if those two are the candidates that will make it there. So confidence boost in Mikey Day that he will be sticking around at least one more year. It's interesting.
Yeah, or more. It really did. He was like, oh, wow, I guess Mikey really does not plan to leave in the foreseeable future, which, good, bad, whatever. Just, I was like, okay, we're keeping him here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is a fascinating cold open. Looking forward to talking about it all week long. Next up, we got our monologue from Nate Bargatze, who comes in and does about a 9-minute stand-up monologue talking about being from Tennessee and then feeling like he's from the 1900s. And it's a lot of like then versus now. I like the monologue. Was a little long, but I did enjoy the fact that he was, had that like really, I know he's known as the nice guy of comedy, but he had that like, what am I really doing here type of vibe to him. And I think that endeared me to him from the start. Andrew, what do you think of the monologue?
Yeah, I had was not familiar with Nate, as I said before. So I didn't, watch any stand up. I was like, all right, I always like when SNL can just introduce me to somebody, and it's the whole, like it wasn't really following a through line, honestly. So it did seem a little bit disconnected, and it's kind of hard to recall all the pieces right now. But I got solid laughs. I thought this was great. I was laughing the entire time. And the whole like the donkey jumping and stuff, like there's a bunch of great moments in this, and I was very, very won over to Nate's side pretty much instantly. So, and as people are saying, hey, it's nice to see a stand-up comic that's not polarizing. It's just a nice guy going out there and tell some goofy jokes. So I enjoyed that very much. Hello, am I the host of the show now?
I think we lost John there for a second. I'm going to hop in on my thoughts until we get John back. And I just want to, so I was familiar with Nate coming into this, and I just, when I saw that he was hosting, my first thought was like, he's very sort of low key. And my worry was like, is he too low key for SNL? What I really liked about this monologue, though, is I think he set the stage for the episode. He was low key in almost every sketch that he did, but he has sort of a writing style and a delivery that it's kind of got a little SNL in its DNA. I think the idea of somebody being born kind of anytime after like 1960 or whatever, saying that they're from the 1900s is kind of a funny line that you would expect on SNL. So that's why I think it worked really good. And the way that he delivers his jokes, and his sort of like weird, just kind of identifying of things was a big theme for the night. So it worked really well. I do think I have a similar complaint. It went a little long. I don't think it needed to be around 9 minutes. Probably somewhere around the 6 or 7 minute mark would have been good. But overall, I really liked it. And like I said, I think it set this. You don't always see the monologue set the stage for the night. Sometimes it's really disconnected, but not in this case.
You guys got me?
Yeah. Yes. Hello. Hi, John.
Hi. Over my dead body. But honestly,
John, what did you think of this?
Yeah, what did I think? I thought that I kept thinking, which is, again, really good monologue. I wonder how SNL, this is a question I would love to ask somebody at the show, and hopefully we'll get the chance one day, which is like, how does it work when you have a stand-up comic coming in to host a show in terms of like how long they get for their monologue? Is it like, okay, Chappelle's coming in, like you get a good 16 minutes. Like, how does that work when they decide, okay, Nate Bargatze, he's this level of famous, so he's going to get 9 minutes versus 5 minutes? Like, I find that stuff really fascinating here because there's no consistency to it. So I wonder if, like how that works. And if you missed, by the way, if you missed Nate Bargatze on Late Night this week with Seth, he was talking about how he came to New York a little bit early in prep for the show, and he went to a bunch of New York comedy clubs to work on his set here to figure out like which parts of his set work with the New York crowd, which is something that you see pretty often with SNL stand-up. So I liked it. I thought it was good. Okay, let's head to our first sketch of the night, where we have the chef showdown sketch. And here comes, your typical like Top Chef level cooking competition, where you have Nate and Ego as the contestants, Heidi as the main judge or host, and Keenan and Punky are the other judges. And it's plate one versus plate two, trying to cook and understand the culture. And then there's a little bit of a mix-up situation where it seems like it's very obvious that Ego was the one who cooked the more cultural relevant food to Keenan and Punky, but no, it was definitely Nate who did that, and we get some really, really fun jokes, including with the helpers with Mikey and Devin, all culminating in Padma, the host of Top Chef, comes in for a cameo here. So what do we think of Chef Showdown to kick off the night, Haskell?
So it's very sort of formulaic to start. I think as they're building into that first joke, you can probably see where it's going. I typically have been a fan, I think the last couple of years, of whenever SNL does go to the cooking show kind of theme. I do watch a lot of Food Network, so I've enjoyed it so far. But with it being formulaic, I think the real thing that sold it, as I think we're seeing in some of the comments, though, is like the idea to have him go right to "I'm sorry." And the whole thing being him being so apologetic about it, I thought really sold this. Like, there's a couple of different ways that they can go with it. Like, it could have been him kind of throwing it in their face that it was his, but I think they took the really good step of him the entire time. He didn't want to win this. He didn't mean to win this. He knows how inappropriate it looks with all the prizes that he's getting. And then again, I think it just plays to Nate's whole like low-key manner about all this. So I thought that was really fun. The only thing that really, my only like hot take about this sketch is I'm really torn. There are some times where Keenan is such a sketch performer that I love his sort of cartooniness of like, I have to take a bite of this food, and I'm like not even going to get it on my fork, and there's literally nothing going into my mouth, and I'm not even really going to pretend to take a bite of it. And I'm really torn on if I find that charming, or if in this case, if I was like, I kind of want you to sell it there. I might be the only one who noticed that, but that's kind of, I was like, at first I was like, oh, that's so Keenan to like, that he doesn't even need to do that. And we all know. And then as it happened, I went like, can you sell it there? Like just I don't know, like a click more there, Keenan. That'd be like literally my only complaint about the sketch.
Yeah, I thought about that a little bit, but when he flicked over the plate and then it fell and then Heidi couldn't keep it together, like that really works for me. So I do think like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And Keenan is usually probably above average in terms of sometimes those moments you get in sketches. So it is something to think about, but I think there was a point in the sketch where it really did work. Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, basically, Chat and Haskell have basically said everything here. I saw the twist coming as soon as it started, basically, but much like this episode does, they just fill out all the details so perfectly. And him just like, oh, I seriously did not mean to do that. I'm sorry. When what award show is like the Ebony Award show or whatever, and he's just like, wow, no, thank you. Like, there's so many, like, just Nate's so good in all of these sketches and sells all of these premises so well that this one really did get over for me. And the Keenan thing is interesting because I felt like, like, he is kind of wildly oscillating between not being in the scene and being one of the better parts of it. And he kind of does like both things at the same time in the sketch, where he's like kind of not fully in it, but then also sells some really great moments. So it was a little bit odd. He was almost like pitched a little bit more than the sketch needed, but the whole plate flipping really, worked. So it's hard to say, like, well, I mean, should he have not done that? I don't know. The Essence Awards there. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, good stuff. I really thought, like, as it started off, much like the cold open, is like, ooh, boy, I kind of already see where this is going, or this doesn't really seem like it's going to work. And it did. I also
want to point out though that something I said last week, which was that I felt like SNL made a conscious effort to not have Bad Bunny be the star of any of those sketches, except for the last one we got at the end of the night. But in this case, I believe that Nate was the star of this sketch, because it's telegraphed to you what's going to happen as the sketch is starting. You see what's going to happen, and the only thing that's not is Nate's reaction to all of this. So the fact that they play him as just real about it and like, I'm sorry, all right, and he's like, oh, this is bad, like, that is the thing that flips a switch on the sketch. So why I felt it worked.
And I think too, it was smart to put this up front, and that Nate is so like unfamiliar to a lot of the people watching tonight, that like if it was a different host, you might have known what the reaction was going to be. You know what I mean? Depending on the host, if it was a real energetic host, that it probably would be a different way that they would have played that. So I think it was smart that we don't quite know what Nate Bargatze is like capable of, and we don't know like where it was going to go. So I think it was just smart for this to come early in the night as well.
But it connects well with the monologue of just the energy and just like how we're using them.
He's saying he's sorry. Like there's almost this essence of him saying like, yeah, like I'm kind of sorry that I'm hosting SNL. You know what I mean? Like there's this whole like, I'm kind of sorry I'm here thing. Like I kind of get that I'm not supposed to be here. But he also proved it throughout the night that he did deserve to be there.
Absolutely.
For sure. Let's pivot over to Hallmark horror film, which was, you see the classic, Christmas Hallmark films. You're going to see them all over your television from now until Christmas. But in comes, Chloe and Nate, who Nate's playing a serial killer that's really an old high school classmate of Chloe's, who, there's this love interest and connection, the old high school crush. Punky's here as Chloe's friend, and Mikey plays Chloe's actual fiance in this. And this is just like a fun, all the Hallmark, movie tropes that you would expect, except all around Halloween. And again, I thought Nate was so good in this too. So, Andrew, what do you think of the Hallmark horror film?
Another one that's like, it feels like a semi-slight premise, but they just fill it all out. And oh my God, the beat of them having like semi-human names, and they like roll out the bizarre names of these actors, and oh man, yeah, I wish I kind of took notes. This is an episode I kind of need to watch again, because like usually when I hop on here, I have like the big moments that made me laugh kind of still locked in my head, because there wasn't terribly much generally, but like this, like there was just so many like ways it went that I really thought this was great too. Maybe not a full-blown classic, but I 100% throw that in the Halloween specials for years to come.
Yeah, I want to say I think everybody in this it was really good in their own way. Chloe I thought was really strong in this. Punky was really great in this as
Yeah,
well.
this is a good use of
Yeah.
Chloe for sure.
100%. And I think that this is one of those sketches that I was watching and I was like, how have they never done this before? The premise is
Mhm.
so obvious, but yet they pulled it off in such a strong way. So for me, this was a great win for the start of the night. Haskell, what do you think of the Hallmark horror film?
Yeah, I mean, definitely low hanging fruit, but like that's kind of the point sometimes is that we all understand what these Hallmark Christmas movies are. We understand the tropes, so let's go out there and make fun of them. And that's what they did. I thought as good as Nate and Chloe were, Punky might have been the MVP of this sketch.
Girl.
Like you need somebody in there commenting kind of not just on like how crazy it is, but also kind of bringing in like the calling out the Hallmark tropes and stuff. I think the line of the sketch for me though was like, I'm so scared. Yeah, scared of like getting killed. No, scared of falling in love. Like that was really great. And then the second line that really got me was like, I have to write an article on the meaning of Halloween, which is both funny because that's kind of a little bit of a callback to the cold open, but also just kind of stands alone on its own of like, the meaning of Halloween? Like we don't need that. We don't need an article like that. So yeah, I think that's an easy sketch to kind of visit each Halloween. I'm sure we will see it again during some sort of clip show or YouTube playlist of different Halloween sketches because it's kind of an easy one. But when it's that easy, you got to hit your marks, and they did hit their marks.
I love the part where they're carving the pumpkins and then Nate is just like stabbing the pumpkin. Like to me, that really got me. And it sort of reminded me like I was a big fan of a Scary Movie, like the first Scary Movie back in the day. And like it sort of like reminds me of that where they took a bunch of horror films, but they made it a comedy. And like I do think that when you're taking horror films and you throw them into different premises, I think like adding the humor to that really, really works. So overall, enjoy this very much. Then we head to our next sketch, which is Washington's Dream. And Nate plays George Washington. And we have Keenan Bowen, Mikey, and JJ as the other founding fathers. And, you think they're going to talk about how they're going to create the country and what everything's going to look like. But they really get into the nitty gritty of the system of weights and measurements, which, by the way, as a Canadian who follows the British system, could completely relate to this, which is talking about pounds versus tons, quarts and liters in a gallon, yards to a mile. The whole thing was so ridiculous, and I loved every minute of it. This was a really, really, really fun sketch. Andrew, I'll go to you on this one first because you seem like you're really excited to talk about it.
Oh my God, this is the first true classic of this season. I thought this one was incredible, just endless, fantastic lines, and like. I really want to know who wrote this because it feels like, it already started off with a really great premise. And this is the most writerly of the entire night, of an already very dense night. But this one, I feel like it's such a great premise that hasn't fully been, it's like, I'm sure this got to rewrites, and everyone had fun pitching in on this, of just the incongruities of like, why do we do this? What is the point of this? And so absolutely loved it. Boom stamp classic for me.
Amazing to hear that. Haskell, did you feel as strong about this as Andrew?
It's the sketch of the night for me. Absolutely 100%. And I thought at the beginning, I thought we were about to hit a clunker. Like I thought Nate Bargatze was struggling a little bit at the beginning. He was very cue card focused, and he was a little bit slower with his delivery. And then it just clicked for him. And this was a great use of the host because this sort of thing I feel like is right up there with his kind of humor in his stand-up. Like I wouldn't be surprised if this was the sketch that he was most involved in throughout the week in terms of probably pitching in some ideas. And it was just played to his delivery so well, of like these little pauses before getting into things. Like definitely have to rewatch it to figure out what my favorite lines were. But the football part really stuck out to me. Obviously we understand hey, it's called football. We don't use our feet a ton, but then to jump forward with like, yeah, we kick the ball for points sometimes. Well, for how many points? Sometimes 1, sometimes it's 3. And then he just his interplay with Keenan through it. The first time Keenan goes, he just kind of ignores him. And then the second one, he jumps into, you were asking about temperature, which was great. And then you don't see this a ton with, kind of, hitting that landing to end the sketch. I feel like in recent years, SNL has kind of resigned themselves to the fact of like, you know what, we're not going to stick the landing. That's fine. We'll fade out a little bit. It might not be the strongest line of the sketch, and we're okay with that. This one, I felt like they really nailed it with even the blocking and everything of like Nate leaving the sketch and Keenan getting that line in of like, and everybody will be treated equal, right? That's a nice hard punch there at the end. And then that's what ends the sketch. Absolutely sketch of the night.
This was so great. And again, like so relatable. I'm a Canadian who makes a show mostly for Americans. And whenever we're typing out copy for the show, like I have to remove the U from like every single word. And it's just like between that and then like having to explain to people that like Fahrenheit to Celsius is like -32 like divided by 7/8. Like the whole thing just makes no sense, right? And I've been dealing with this for my entire life.
What was that word what was that F word you used?
What did I say?
You said Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit.
Can you spell that for me?
I cannot. Yeah, but this was awesome. Can't wait to keep talking about this one. And this was really fun. George Washington impressions in the history of Saturday Night Live include Brad Hall, Dennis Miller, Kevin Nealon, Russell Brand, and Jimmy Fallon did on the Weekend Update, the summer edition. So here we go. Another George Washington.
I love any episode we can reference Kevin twice.
100%. Yeah. Kevin Nealon with all the presidential impressions between George Washington and Joe Biden. Yeah. So this was fun. And then let me tell you, I was fascinated by this next sketch we got, which was our Lake Beach music video sketch, where we had Nate and Dismukes and JAJ all together singing a song, just a full music video with all of the tropes about the South and being at the Lake Beach where we get appearances. We get to see Michael Longfellow and Marcello in this. Like there's a lot of really fun moments. I was told from our friend Andy Hoagland that this is actually part of JAJ's stand-up set. He took this and turned it into a music video. Okay. So if you would have seen JAJ in person, you may have seen parts of this before. And so
was it still a song?
Yeah, I believe he did some of that in songs. So this is really interesting how he sort of like brought this premise back to the show, and then they turned it into like a full-fledged music video with great production. And I love the team. Like that was our thought before the season, which was like we love the team of Dismukes and JJ together. Like I think they're so strong together. So for me to get more sketches with them was very exciting. Haskell, I'll start with you on this one. What do you think of Lake Beach?
I might watch it again before I go back to bed because that was jam packed. Like there's no way I can remember everything that they got to in that. But what I do remember is how much fun it looked like everybody a part of that was having. Especially Dave Grohl, who came in and was lights out in his performance as the guy that we all know who's way too into cornhole and is willing to fight anybody on all the rules. But yeah, it was jam packed. Again, that's like, I feel like another theme of the night was like premises that we should know and that are low hanging fruit and that they had to hit their marks to make it happen. And they did. Like it was a really, really fun one. I think my favorite line was like, don't go over there. That's where the bats are. And they just kind of break the song a little bit. Just like, nah, get away from the bats. Like, I thought that was really fun.
It does not fit in the in the form of the song at all.
Exactly. So, I drafted Dismukes last year for my SNL fantasy team. I did not draft him this year, but I'm still team Dismukes. And he's so good at things like this. And I like you said, that team of him and JAJ, like that, they are quickly becoming like a Mikey Day and Streeter team for me, where I'm like, yeah, like let's find a block in the show and make sure that they get a sketch every week because I like what that team can do.
Yeah, I think the comp for me is probably like Forte and Sudeikis liked, like having them together. I do think that there's some like tree there, because yeah, I mean those guys like JJ and Andrew, they grew up on that generation of the show where they were willing to do music videos in all different musical formats, and I think that we've sort of gotten very used to over the last few years seeing rap videos from SNL and not as many, you know, different genres of music that they could play with and have fun with. And I think the fact that this was like, you know, Southern tropes putting in the country music made sense. So I think this worked on all levels. What did you think, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. Another winner for this episode. And, you know, as a man from the Carolinas, I've been on a lot of crunchy lake beaches. So this is all true to life, indeed. And yeah, I just it's very interesting. I mean, obviously, you know, I knew this was something that was from the mind of James, but yeah, interesting to see that this is something that he's been kind of cooking for a while, because once again, this one is just jam packed with details, and much like Haskell's, it's like I need to watch this again, because Lord knows I missed like at least 3, 4, 5, 6 details throughout the whole thing. Like it's just it felt like, you know, it did not feel like a sketch that was written that week. Like this felt like something that had been percolating for a while, and now is presented fully formed, which is not a thing that SNL does at all, rarely, you know. So yeah, another killer sketch for the night. I mean, we are just cooking right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, they even if JJ brings in this idea in season 49, he's like, okay, I know I want to do this at some point. Like, you can't do this sketch with Pete. You can't do it with Bad Bunny. Like, you can only really do this with a Nate Bargatze type. So that's why like this felt like the right week, and they were able to pull it off. So I think it's great. And I think it's, by the way, this airing, when it aired, like typically they would air a music video before Weekend Update, but the fact that they did, and JJ and Andrew, like as a pair, were leading it, I think shows confidence in the show with them. So like, this is a win-win all around. Then we get to Trick or Treat with Fran Drescher. So here's Sarah Sherman as Fran Drescher. And, you know, Sarah Sherman, I'll say, has had a little bit of a slow start to season 49. Really not too involved. Like, I think only in 3 sketches through 2 episodes. Now we get to see her lead this sketch where we have Ego and Nate, you know, giving some candy to children. But in comes Fran Drescher saying, no, because if they're wearing character costumes from different TV shows or movies, they may be scabbing. And really a hugely long rant from Sarah as Fran about all the different do's and don'ts of this crazy time where the SAG strike is still going. So this was a really interesting thing to happen, and for SNL to air it. Like I'm excited to talk about this a lot. So Andrew, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, baffled at this. Big bafflement. I don't know like what their point was, because also like SAG rolled it back. It was like, all right, we're not talking about your kids or whatever. Like, you know, they already rolled back whatever this is commenting on. And then, yeah, just kind of the whole optics of it, of the show, kind of halfway, you know, I don't know what the take was, what they were doing here, and why they decided it was strong enough to put up on the show, because it was just like, it felt like at a certain point they got cold feet. And so they kind of started to strip away the point of it or whatever they're going for. And if they were going for something else, like whatever they're going for, it didn't look good. I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, you guys are back on the air and SAG's still on strike. People are kind of expecting it's going to end soon, but it's like, this doesn't look good, guys. And also, it wasn't terribly funny. Like, it was the first, like, you know, misstep of the night. And it was a pretty big stumble, kind of killed the pacing, because I was just like, what are they doing here? Why would they do this? You can only do this if you have a damn good point to make, and they didn't. So yeah.
But I don't think they were trying to be biting. I think they were aiming to have fun here, and I think that the kids were really good. Like every one of them was like, it's not easy, and the kids were really good on screen. And yeah. I think probably the you know, everybody has heard Fran Drescher, you know, in the way that she's spoken about the strikes, and I think that Sarah had a premise here that she wanted to go with, and really just won me over with the fact that she was so like charismatic with it and had high energy. And I think I was probably a little bit more lenient on this than you, Andrew, because I was just enjoying the episode so much to this point that like I had fun with it. Haskell, what do you think?
All right. In order to praise what I want to praise about this sketch, I feel like I need to set the stage to say I am union until I die. I was a IATSE stagehand through college. That paid for my college. I am in a teachers union now. I am union until I die. But there's something I really liked that SNL did with this sketch, which is they did take their shots at the studio, which I'm glad they did. But by evening the playing field a little bit and poking fun a little bit at SAG for, I know they have pulled back on the Halloween thing, but it did make headlines with the costumes. By evening the field a little bit, it didn't, SNL does have a tendency sometimes to be really preachy. And I'm not talking about the stuff like that they've done on Weekend Update that really deserves to be preachy. But there are some times where you get a sketch and you're just like, is this just your soapbox? Like, so I'm glad they didn't just come out and do a strike sketch that was just taking a shot at the studio, or the studios, even though I think we can all agree that like they probably deserve it. I think by evening the playing field, by poking a little bit fun at SAG, it made the point that, you know, when Sarah makes the joke about all the Kit Kat bars and how the studios could, I don't know, break us off a piece of that. Like, I feel like that hit stronger because it wasn't just a preachy sketch about supporting the strike, even though we all agree that's where we should be. And then on top of that, you do get this really fun, silly sketch of like substituting in the Halloween costumes, which I think is the core of the sketch. I don't think either way they were trying to really comment on the strike. I think when that headline came out, somebody had the idea of like, well, if you're not going to be an existing IP that's in TV and movies, what are you going to be? And then they add in the kids, which I thought was really fun. And we get one of the lines of the night, which is, the wig is fake, but the wine is real. That was great. And whoever that little girl was delivered that line amazingly. And you could tell she really wanted to deliver it because she waited for the previous laughs to die down. So, 5 stars to whoever that long career once the strike's over for that little girl, because that was awesome.
Yeah, I just it's the framing device. I mean, okay, I get it. The let's do the knockoff costumes or whatever. But again, even if you were following the story, they already said no, that's not what we mean. And yeah, just like the whole line, the whole Kit Kat line seems like a concession where somebody was like, I think this is going to make us look bad. We kind of need to like write ourselves out of this. And so, yeah, I figured they needed to envision that idea in a different way, because I agree with you. Yes, knockoff costumes or non-IP related costuming is a decent idea, but I felt like the story had already gotten away from them, and then whatever this was trying to do kind of got away from them. So I just felt like they shouldn't have done it. Like, just yeah.
This is like, I feel like I'm going to come off terribly, but like, I get that this is like top of your list of like things that you don't want to end up on the wrong side of. But I'm also like okay with SNL being like, we wrote something and it's like kind of not on the right side of where we think we want to be. Let's even it out a little bit. Like, I'm okay with SNL taking that chance. And I feel like an update, and even maybe in the cold open, there were a couple points in this episode. Like, there was a couple points in this episode where I kind of thought like, I feel like if somebody who's not on the left happened to turn the episode on tonight, they might be seeing kind of a different SNL than they were expecting. And although that's not my side, I'm okay with that sometimes. And I know one of the worst things to choose that on is this strike, because it's so easy to fall on the right side of that, which is on the union side. I'm okay with SNL writing a sketch and being like, you know what? We actually don't mean anything by it. We just were poking fun at something. we're not trying to stand against the strike. Like, I think that's what so many people on both sides of the aisle are looking for in comedy nowadays, to just be like, it's okay to poke fun at something, and it's not actually a message. It's just poking fun at something, and we're going to move on and support the right side when it's time to support it, and poke fun at something when you're supposed to poke fun at something, which is hopefully what you're trying to do in a comedy show.
Fair enough. I couldn't
enough,
agree more,
indeed.
Haskell. Yeah, for sure. Thanks. I appreciate that, because the truth is like I was sort of like being a little bit light in my viewing of it, but I do think that there's a lot to digest here. So it was an interesting one to end the first half of the evening on, and it was a long first half of the evening with that long monologue and stuff like that. And finally, we do get to the Foo Fighters, who are returning to perform on the show, and Foo Fighters. And I've Christopher Walken back to reprise his 2003 intro. So fun. Just love that they leaned into the bit. And so we get one song and then a second song with her, who's just like the most fantastic musician as well. To get them performing together was so exciting. And yeah, I mean, Foo Fighters have had a ridiculously long history with Saturday Night Live, coming in just so many times during different eras of the show. And Dave Grohl, to me, is the same way that we celebrate Steve Martin as like his history with Saturday Night Live, like music, as Andrew Dick will attest to, is such a huge part of the show. And Dave Grohl has been probably the most influential just important musician over the last few decades to the history of Saturday Night Live, like going back to the Nirvana days with those performances, and them Crooked Vultures, and then with Paul McCartney. It's just so incredible to have him back on the show, and I think we got to appreciate every time Dave Grohl's there, because it's just so fantastic. Were you excited to see the Foo Fighters, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge Foo Fighters fan, but I do appreciate them. I will be honest and say these performances did not, kind of thrill me, but they were, I think, completely fine. And it was nice to see her there as well. But, it felt like pretty perfunctory, Foo Fighters songs. Somebody had said that, there were better songs on the album, and I'm sure there are, but I don't know. I mean, it was of the three musical guests we've gotten, it was probably the best, but kind of only, by a little bit. But it's always, I did like getting Dave into the sketches. Like, I always felt, it's like, why have we never had him, host? It's like, it's been so weird. He, like you say, such a legacy. He's a goofy guy. So, a give and take. I liked seeing him in the sketches, was not, completely thrilled by the music, but I wasn't just like, oh my God, this sucks. It's just like, not really lighting my world on fire.
All right. Haskell, did it light your world on fire?
I love Dave Grohl. I love Foo Fighters. I actually got to see them perform live a few times when I was an IATSE stagehand back when I was in college. I just love Dave Grohl's energy. He's just such a great, ambassador for music. And yeah, he's never hosted, but I just feel like he's always down to cameo. He's always down to show up on the late night shows or the Today Show or, the Light in Rockefeller Plaza or wherever it may be. Like, Dave Grohl is going to show up and he's going to bring the energy. And there's just something that I really, really love about him. He's one of my favorite celebrities. And I'm not even a huge music person. But there's just something about his energy that I enjoy. I really love, as stupid as it may be, they leaned into the Christopher Walken Foo Fighters meme, because I love when SNL is plugged into the moment. And that took off this week. And for them to jump in and be a part of it, I like that there's a timelessness to this episode, but there's also I'll remember that was Halloween 2023 because of some of the stuff that was happening. And that meme plays into it. And John, I was going to ask you this off air, but I really got to ask you it on air. Was Dave Grohl being his 15th appearance? Was that in any SNL official press release, or was that a Saturday Night Network exclusive? Because I heard something this week. So do you know if that was put out in a press release, or that was
not put out in the press release? Actually, in the press release, they mentioned that this was the Foo Fighters. I think I have to check my email, but I'm pretty sure they said 9th or 10th performance. No, I think they said 9th performance on the show, not counting his the 10th time when they were there with Mick Jagger in 2012. And I was like, that's not right. So I'm like, I should say something to them. But
so I was driving home last night Foo Fighters song, I believe it was Everlong, if I remember correctly, was finishing on the radio. And the DJ jumped in and he goes, "Hey, Foo Fighters on Saturday Night Live tomorrow. Their 10th appearance on the show. Here's a little fun fact, though. It is Dave Grohl's 15th time as a musical guest." And my buzzer went off. I went, where did he get that information? And I have to bet it's from Saturday Night Network. It has to be. So big credit to everybody in our stats department for that one.
100%. Well, thank you, Boston radio host, for shouting us out. That's awesome. Look, I had a lot of fun with the music. I think it was a good time. And we do head to a weekend update. And here we go. Some fun jokes. And ultimately, we get a cut sketch from appearance from last week comes on to this week with Sarah as JJ Gordon, or better known as Colin's agent. This is sort of the reprise of what we were getting previously with the Genesis Fry at the end of last season, and then the Sarah News. It's just a different version of how can we make fun of Colin Jost. So this was cut from last week's show, now brought on to this week's show. Haskell, what did you think of Sarah as JJ Gordon here?
It was really good. It was really fun. It was really energetic. There was a couple of really good lines in there. I like to see kind of what were some of the roles that they could get Colin into, which I thought were fun. I think I would have enjoyed this a little bit more if it was one of two or one of three. We've got some really short weekend updates this year, and I don't know if that's partly just the flow of the show, or if it's just Colin and Che being their minds being elsewhere and they literally just don't have the time to put into weekend update throughout the week. But if we're only getting one weekend update correspondent, I don't know if I want it to be the Colin Jost show. Like, I think I'd rather have something a little bit more topical for them to go to. So, like I said, really fun. I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more as part of a bigger weekend update piece.
Well, let me put this into bigger context before Andrew jumps in, which is that we did have two other cut correspondents jumping in on Weekend Updates tonight. And that would be Punky Johnson, who was going to come on as Michael Che's ex telling spooky stories. And then we also got cut Heidi Gardner doing Crystal, the coworker who's extremely busy doing seemingly nothing. That was what we saw last year in the Anna de Armas episode, a reprise of that. So those were both cut tonight.
Give me Punky there. Give me Punky doing something Halloween related. I would have loved that.
Yeah, I agree with that. This wasn't bad. It is very interesting to see them, really slicing and dicing update this season so far, which I'm all right with. And I gotta admit, I'm getting kind of tired of Jost and Che. I mean, they got some great jokes in tonight, but it's been a long time. I'm kind of looking for something more in this segment, and that kind of extends to my thoughts on Sarah's piece, where it's just another Jost roast thing with a new coat of paint on it. And yeah, there's a bunch of good lines, and Jost does well reacting against it, but it felt pretty well trod territory. And yeah, I think I don't know what it looked like, but just on the basis of what you're telling me, I would have liked to see the Punky commentary instead.
Yeah, look, I said last year, I do think that if they're going to continue the Sarah versus Colin Jost stuff, give me new premises as opposed to consistently getting Sarah news once a month. So I don't mind if they try different things to be put out there through the lens of, this time, I guess, Colin's agent. So this was fine. I would have liked to see the Punky thing for sure. But regardless, I think Sarah Sherman's amazing. Like I said, I think she's been highly underutilized so far in season 49. So at least they're ramping her up a little bit to hopefully have a good run in November. So that's sort of my 2 cents on it all. After Weekend Update, we get to a sketch called Airplane, where we have Chloe and Devin as a couple on the plane. Chloe goes into labor and they're looking for a doctor. Is anybody a doctor? But no, Nate is a lawyer. Then they get into a whole debate about, is a lawyer the second best job in the world? Andrew says that an engineer is. Trost is a teacher. Boo. Bowen is a kind of doctor. Heidi's a mother, but in terms of real stuff, we also get Mikey as a pilot, and Dave Grohl is a doctor for Halloween. So this is a kind of fun, really interesting, weird late night sketch. And I would love to know, Andrew, what you thought of it.
this felt feverish in a really good way. And another one where it kind of started and I was like, this feels like a slight premise, but the fact that they just kind of double down, like really dig into the nonsense. Like when Andrew stands up and he's like, no, I'm also a lawyer, but I don't think it's the second best job. And then they start, unraveling all the details. It really got to me. And I think I really like, Bowen hasn't been at the height of his powers for me this season, but him standing up and just like, I'm a certain type of doctor, and they're like, no, and he's like, okay, and sits down, like, was a perfect use of him. And it's like on another week we would have gotten a whole sketch just about that certain type of doctor, but like it really had a good, just like, oh yeah, get and just move on to something else. The whole bit with Mikey is like, well, who's flying the plane? Is, oh my god, it's autopilot. Like just so many good gags in this, and really continued with the crazy, chaotic nature of this episode.
Yeah, there's also I was thinking, it was like, are they not going to say that like nurse is like the second best job? Like that's where I thought this was going, but they went in like so many different directions that I think it was fun. And I, like this is, you talked about one of the sketches earlier than I being writerly. I think this is a really like writerly sketch where you just have you have a bunch of really witty comedic writers sitting down at a table being like, how can we continue to make this premise better? And you could have written this sketch and mad-libbed it in a million different ways, but I think what they ended up here with was really, really strong. Haskell, what did you think of it?
I think, one, I just love the idea, like the silliness of the second best job. Like they don't even add like useful or important, or it's just the best job. Like what an open-ended, like weird debate to be having. And then to go with like it felt like such a childhood view of it. Like doctor, lawyer, engineer, like, yeah, those are the three best jobs. Like that's like, when you're a kid and you can only think of like 10 professions that there are, like that's what you would come up with, which I think is really funny. So that was like a great part of it that I really enjoyed. I also think like just based on the timing of the episode where a few things happened later, we didn't get a ton post update. This felt like, especially the way it ended, Dave Grohl like got in there, delivered his line, and we were out very quickly. I assume this was a sketch that got cut up a lot. And I think a lot of times that is an issue for a sketch. I think this helped this sketch. I think a lot of the fat got trimmed off of this, and we were left only what was needed and was the best lines. And you can really feel that. That's a really punchy sketch where nothing is really wasted. There's no wasted lines in that sketch, and it plays very quickly. And last thought, I'm a teacher, and I thought it was really funny the way that they made fun of teachers. So the whole like, plays into my thing. Like you can poke fun at something without making a statement about it. So those are my thoughts on that one.
I vote for podcaster to be the second best job. But anyways, I was told that in dress rehearsal, Dave Grohl's line was changed to end the sketch. So in the sketch that you saw live, you saw that Grohl is a doctor for Halloween. But in dress, he actually said the best job in the world is a rock star and then a doctor, playing on the fact that he's Dave Grohl. And I think that the change that they made here was actually much better.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. But yeah, this was a fun sketch. And then we're going to get our final sketch of the night, which is a pre-tape. And we get our third PDD in a row. I'd heard there was going to be a PDD. We saw it in the opening credits, but would this be cut? And they ended up putting in here, PDD eats dog food. Not much more to say about that. So, Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah, my main, like, as I was watching the night, and I was like, okay, well, they credited, please don't destroy. Are they going to show it? And now I'm wondering, like, will there be a week where they're not in the credits? It's just like, now I'm wondering if they're kind of doing that thing. Like, if they don't have a pre-tape, will they be in the credits for the opening? Generally, I didn't, it wasn't terribly great to my tastes. And I usually love dog food, but this one didn't get over for me. And I'm kind of just like, I don't know.
You love
I've said
dog
this. I've said this a lot, but like, I'm just
What's your favorite flavor of dog food?
Like it dry or wet?
Just anything with ketchup on it. It makes it sing. These, like, I'm just getting kind of, I've said this a million times before, but like, I'm getting tired of seeing them in the office. It's like, there's so much space that they could be using backstage to be doing this. Like, why couldn't they be doing this in the, I don't know, where they eat lunch and stuff? Like, it's just, I really get tired of seeing them in the office and then just cutting between that claustrophobic space. It just kind of, I don't know. Like, I've seen it so many times, and they've been branching out, and those are usually the better ones. The Brendan Gleeson and Jenna Ortega. I think they did one with Quinta Bronson that was out of the. It's like, and so I don't know. I see them in the office and just go, okay, another one of these. But they've done better. This wasn't awful. It was just kind of middle of the road.
Yeah, I think our big debates like last year and in the first season was like Office or no Office. And for me, it's less about that now because I just think that The Office is like at least has to be in the sketch for part of it. But I do think that where the sketch falls flat is that like I am expecting now, like PDD, they're such big stars outside the show. They're getting their own movie soon. Like it's coming out next month. They have had 2 sketches in a row with a bunch of guests in it. Like when I see a PDD sketch, I'm expecting we're going to get a cameo in there or something big's going to happen. The fact that this was so grounded, maybe you enjoyed that because it felt different. But for me, like the expectation that we were going to have like a very random person eating dog food was, what I was thinking about the entire time. And when it just stayed the 3 of them, like even though they're brilliant and it's like, fun to have a little bit of back and forth, it fell flat for me a little bit compared to the last 2 that we got this season so far. Haskell, how did you feel about the dog food pre-tape with PDD?
Well, the funny thing is I love them in The Office. But what's missing, what I love about The Office is it's this absolute sandbox where anything can happen and anything can appear. And that's what was really missing from this sketch, is that everything that they needed was kind of already could have been in The Office. But there are times when they're in that office where things magically appear, like it's almost watching a live action cartoon where things just magically pop up as they need them. And this wasn't. That bag of dog food could have been in The Office already. Those bowls could have been in The Office already. I honestly, instead of the door opening and the dog coming in, I kind of wish they just pulled the dog out from under somebody's desk or between the couch cushions or something. Like that's the magic of this office. Is it's this place inside, 30 Rock that is like not bound to like real world logic. That's why I love that office, and that's what was really missing. And then just like, I really think they left it untapped. Like you said, like I wish there was somebody else, a cameo that got them involved, or somebody really getting into like the scam of this thing of like, it's somebody selling them dog food as real food and just kind of slapping that label on. But like, how did they get caught up in this? Or, really that sort of thing, not just spending the entire time talking about like, you can't do this. I think that's what they really miss. And also, like, how do you do a sketch about dog food and eating it and not comment about having that dog in you? Like, come on, like, I feel like that's a line that's like made for one of them to kind of like butcher and sound really like nerdy. I think that's a big miss. So, I don't think I've watched any PDD and really felt like, oh boy, that was nothing. But I just feel like there was just this untapped potential in that one, because the visuals were funny of him eating out of the bowl. Though I think the reaction to like the don't open the wet food in here, like you could, as he opens it up, like if anybody's ever dealt with like wet dog food or cat food, probably knows what that office smelled like right away. So there was some stuff that worked, but just untapped. It was too surface level.
So there you go. That was our night, except we did get a bumper and tribute to Matthew Perry, who many of you, of course, know him for Friends. He did host a Saturday Night Live back on October 4th, 1997, during season 4 of Friends. And I just want to take a minute and, sometimes we have like tributes that are more SNL related, but I'll just say personally, Matthew Perry like defined my comedic sensibilities in many ways. Like as much as I love Saturday Night Live, like I grew up on Friends. Whenever I've like had a bad moment in my life and like been sad or upset about something, one of the only things in life that actually makes me feel better is watching an episode of Friends. And Matthew Perry as Chandler is a huge part of that. Like I've watched Friends is like such a big part of my life that like I can't imagine now going back and watching an episode and like knowing and seeing him there, like that he's like not around anymore. But I just know that he is one of the funniest people that's ever walked this planet, and I'm thinking about him and his career, and really sad today. It was really hit me hard, but I'm glad that SNL was able to honor him. So for me, this one really hurts, and was really touching to happen to see that bumper come up. It just like made it feel real all over again. So rest in peace, Matthew Perry.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, Friends never was a big thing for me personally. I did watch it with my sister quite often, but like I was never a huge fan of the show. But I did always appreciate Matthew Perry. His episode on SNL is, along with Jennifer Aniston, the best of the Friends hosted episodes. And when he passed, and I was thinking about that episode that he hosted, my mind went to the sketch that he does with Will Ferrell's Harry Carey, and I always appreciated that iteration of the sketch because Matthew, I think he's the only one that does that sketch with Will and never broke. Like, he doesn't break, and he keeps this just like bewildered bafflement just pitched at the right level throughout the entire thing, and I always appreciated that because it's like that's just like he's one of he did not break, he did not do a Goldblum or whatever and kind of laugh through it. And there's also the Celebrity Jeopardy that was really good in that episode as well. So definitely worthwhile for everyone to go watch that episode. So yeah, rest in peace.
Haskell?
Yeah, for me, I mean, Friends was kind of the first sitcom that I got into. I was in like third grade. I don't know why my mom would let me watch it that young, but I did. And I think for a lot of people of a certain age, like Friends was like the first like non-family sitcom that a lot of people got into. So regardless of how you feel about kind of the humor and how much it stands up, like Friends is if and worst top 10 iconic shows of all time. Like it is.
Yeah.
You mentioned the name Friends, like everybody knows it. Everybody knows those 6 characters. And Chandler defines the humor of that show, and Matthew Perry defined the humor of that show. And it's, I think back to literally last week, I was having a discussion with some coworkers about Friends, and I feel really bad because I made the comment that I felt like amongst all of the denial for years about how they would never truly do a reunion, I always felt that in my lifetime I would see another episode of Friends. Like I just felt like at some point they would come back together and do a true reunion episode at some point in their lives. And it's just, I just feel gutted to like, it's not going to happen. Like it's just really sad. And somebody who dealt with a lot of, he obviously had his demons and he fought through them. So it's a really sad loss for, I think, just TV and comedy in general.
Absolutely. Well, thinking of Matthew Perry today. Okay. We had a really strong episode of Saturday Night Live tonight, and
we got
so excited.
Off.
Yes. So let's turn our attention to rating this episode. So Haskell and Andrew, while you guys think of your ratings in the chat, while you give us your ratings out of 10, I'm going to tell you what was cut from the show tonight. So we got 4 sketches that didn't make it to air. Here we had first a sketch called Ghouls or Boozeum, where we had Heidi and Longfellow, Chloe as reporters on the scene to see Nate as the owner of the Boozeum, which was he was a homeowner who goes crazy for Halloween with great decorations. He calls it his Boozeum. Teacher's Husband was a sketch where we had Heidi as Miss Sweet and Nate as the husband, Sarah, Andrew, Trost, and Marcello as students, Bowen as the baby gets green screened in. That's a Teacher's Husband sketch, all about Nate as the husband of Heidi, Miss Sweet. Noah's Ark was a sketch as well, where Nate is Noah and Heidi is his wife, and Keenan tries to stay with them to get on the Ark. Vampire Show was our last sketch that was cut from the night, where Ego, this was an Ego sketch where she reacts to everything during a film shoot when she's supposed to be an extra. Nate plays a cop, Chloe and Devin are as a couple, Sarah as a waitress, and JJ as the director. An Ego sketch called A Vampire Show was cut as well. All right, Haskell, thoughts out of 10 for our 3rd episode of season 49.
I'm going to go with a 8.5. I think that it was a solid B plus. Look at me and Bill. We're right on it. He also said 8.5, but I think it's a solid B plus. I think it was definitely the best episode of the season so far for me. I think it hit all the marks of a good, really good episode of SNL that just falls short of being like a great episode. I think in order to be an A, Weekend Update has to be better. And I think we see this happen a lot with really good episodes where you're like, if I was judging this of pre-Weekend Update, it's an A. But it falls off a little bit after Weekend Update, and I think the timing just felt off for for an episode that had a short Weekend Update and didn't have a lot after Update. I didn't really feel like I got a ton elsewhere. So what we did get was good. It was B plus. It was really good B plus material, just a little bit short of being a high B plus or an A.
Andrew?
I think I can go a solid 8 out of 10 on this one. Yeah, like Haskell says, the flow a little bit odd. And really, I felt that what really kind of is the sticking point was the Fran Drescher sketch, which, maybe they could have cut, maybe threw in the Boozeum in the back half or whatever. I kind of like that stupid idea. But overall, I mean, super strong outing for SNL. We got a Boom Stamp Classic in there with the George Washington thing. And everything else was just, it was cooking pretty damn well. And it seemed like quite the step up from the first 2 episodes. That's what really sticks out to me is like, wow, it felt like a different show. All of a sudden, it's like, it's like, my old friend SNL's back. Finally decided to show up on the 3rd week. But boy, did it show up! It really, I thought this was a solid night. For sure. And if Ellis said that the dress rehearsal felt a little bit sloppier, I guess maybe they made the right cuts. So, props to some good editing, some good choices made top down on what actually should have made the show. So, a damn good effort. And I'm looking forward to Timothy coming back.
Yeah,
sure.
That'll be exciting. I'm probably right between you guys. I guess I'll go 8 for this one. I think it was a really, really strong episode, including Biden Halloween, into the monologue, into Chef Showdown. The Hallmark horror movie was really good. Washington's Dream, we talked about how amazing of a sketch that was. Lake Beach was really, really fun. Probably tails off at that point with Trick or Treat, Weekend Updates. Airplane was a good sketch for the back half, and then PDD was probably one of the weaker PDDs that I've seen through the first few years. There was nothing that I felt like was really bad, but there were some extremely high highs. 8.5, something like that. I think you guys are right on the money with this one. This was a really, really strong episode of the show, and I do think overall the best episode of the season so far, and makes me so excited what we're gonna get with Timothy Chalamet and Boy Genius coming up on November 11th, and that is the next time we will be live with our Hot Take show live at 1:10 a.m. right after that show. But first, we have so much more coverage of Nate Bargatze and Foo Fighters this week, including our Monday night roundtable at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we will be live to break down the sketches even further, only the sketches we really want to get into. Mike Murray and Victoria Franzo will be back on Wednesday to give you all the screen time from the week. So make sure to join us for our By the Numbers show coming up on Wednesday night. And then next Thursday night, I will be back for the continuation of our countdown of the greatest cast members of all time, 3 a week, as we head towards right outside the top 20 greatest cast members of all time. That is a very, very fun show if you want to jump in on that one next Thursday. And then the following Monday, we will have our first patron feedback show of the season, where if you are a patron and you want to join us, patreon.com/the SNL Network, you can call in, appear on the show with us, answer some SNL questions from the fans. It's a really fun show. So we'll be live the following Monday. And if you are a Patreon, you will know that you're getting an extra podcast every single week with the SNL sketch breakdown that we do, where the patrons vote for the sketch they want to hear us talk about even further. And we deliver that show just for you on Patreon. So patreon.com/the SNL Network. You can also subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and follow us at the SNL Network on any social platform. Haskell, thanks for joining us tonight. Where can the listeners check out everything you got going on?
Andrew E. Haskell on Twitter. It's always going to be Twitter to me, or Instagram. Come out stand-up dates. I'll be back at Rhode Island Comedy Connection on November 15th. So if you're in the area, come check it out.
Absolutely. All right. Andrew Dick, where can people check out what's happening on That Week in SNL?
That Week in SNL and all your regular podcast places. We're talking vintage SNL. We've kicked off the season with the Lily Tomlin season 2 premiere. We've talked about John C. Reilly and My Chemical Romance from season 32.
My first sponsor, My Chemical Romance.
Oh, really? Did you like what we said about My Chemical Romance?
I did. Let's put a pin in that for when I'm on with you next time, and we'll talk about that.
John will be appearing later in the season. And our newest episode, speaking of, music I quite enjoy, we're talking about the episode hosted by Frank Zappa from October 21st, 1978, which is a heartbreaking episode for me because I love Zappa, I love SNL, and the two do not come together to make a great episode, but we had a great time talking about it. So That Week in SNL, we're talking about the old stuff. So find us.
All right. Well, thank you for staying up late with us for this 3rd week in a row. So excited to be back with you for season 49. On behalf of Andrew Haskell, Andrew Dick, and myself, Jon Schneider from the SNN, we will see you next time, everybody.